What if I told you a country with huge oil reserves, gas wealth, and millions of young skilled workers is one of the most economically trapped nations on Earth? Not because it lacks potential, but because something else is holding it back. This is Iran, an economy that should be massive, yet isn't. Today we're diving deep into one of the great economic mysteries of our time. Why Iran, a nation bursting with natural wealth and human capital, has repeatedly failed to convert its potential into prosperity. In this video, you'll learn what makes Iran's economy incredibly powerful on paper, what realities keep it stuck, and why, despite everything, many inside and outside Iran believe the government simply doesn't care enough to fix it. We'll unpack the problems, from sanctions to mismanagement, and explore what really stands between Iran and economic success. Let's get into it. Imagine a country sitting on one of the world's largest oil reserves, historically ranking near the top globally. Massive natural gas deposits among the biggest in the world. A huge young population, highly educated yet hungry for opportunity. A strategic location between East and West that could make it a global trade and logistics hub. Economists say that if Iran used its resources effectively, it could easily be one of the biggest economies in the region. Its workforce, youth, and raw materials give it a powerful head start, but the story on the ground is starkly different. There's no way around it. Sanctions have been Iran's biggest economic burden for decades. Since the U.S. withdrew from the nuclear deal in 2018 and reimposed wide-ranging sanctions, Iran's ability to trade freely has collapsed. Oil exports, once the lifeblood of the economy, are heavily restricted, and even when Iran does export crude, it gets huge discounts because it must sell through clandestine channels to avoid sanctions. The national currency, the rial, has plunged to historic lows, eroding the value of wages and savings. Banking and finance systems are cut off from international markets, making basic trade impossible without complex workarounds. Sanctions aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they shape reality. Iranian companies struggle to buy machinery, technology, or foreign inputs. Basic economic activity becomes a battle against external pressure. Iran's currency has lost enormous value against the US dollar, a sign of prolonged economic stress. When a country's money loses value, prices rise rapidly. People buy less with more money. Savings evaporate. This is exactly what has happened. Millions of Iranians watch their purchasing power shrink year after year, even as inflation surged far beyond what most governments could easily control. On paper, oil should be Iran's ticket to prosperity. Instead, oil revenue is difficult to access because sanctions cut Iran's access to global financial channels. Iran must discount oil prices heavily to attract buyers willing to risk sanctions. Without oil money flowing freely into the economy, there's little capital to invest in new industries or infrastructure. An economy tethered to oil is vulnerable even with access to markets, much more so when access is blocked. And despite being an oil giant, Iran is now forced to import fuel at high costs because domestic production and refining infrastructure have been neglected. External pressure tells only half the story. Internally, Iran's economy suffers from mismanagement and inefficiency in key sectors, corruption, and lack of transparency. Powerful government-affiliated entities controlling vast parts of the economy. A huge informal economy that makes regulation and growth harder. Experts note that even without sanctions, Iran would need major reforms to unlock growth. Reforms that are politically and socially complex. With uncertainty and instability high, both foreign and local investors have held back. Many Iranians, especially the young and educated, choose to leave the country in search of opportunity abroad. Talent flows out. jobs become scarcer. Domestic innovation declines. Instead of a competitive workforce fueling growth, Iran finds itself losing some of its most valuable resources: skilled people. So, if Iran has the land, people, and resources, why does its economy still flounder? This brings us to the core challenge. Iran's leadership has prioritized political and military objectives over economic reforms that could unlock real growth. Instead of restructuring the economy, opening markets, encouraging private enterprise, and normalizing trade relations, the focus has often been on regional political strategies, military spending, strategic programs that further isolate the economy. This is why you often hear analysts saying, Iran could be huge, but it doesn't act like it cares enough to make that happen. Let's unpack this deeper. A. Political versus economic priorities. Iran's leadership often frames challenges as ideological struggles focusing on self-sufficiency rather than globalization. This narrative appeals domestically, but economically it means restricted foreign trade, protectionist policies, limited foreign investment incentives. Many economists argue that real growth would require stepping outside the current political mindset. For millions of Iranians, prices for basic goods rise every year. Wages lose their purchasing power. Job opportunities remain limited. Despite abundant natural wealth, the average person feels economic pressure, a clear sign that wealth isn't translating into widespread prosperity. Economic strain has fueled protests, especially in recent years, as the cost of living rises and basic rights become intertwined with economic frustration. Governments around the world fear economic collapse because people lose faith in institutions, social unrest grows, long-term stability erodes. Iran is no exception. Now, here's the pivotal question. Is Iran doomed to economic stagnation forever, or can it change? The answer lies in one factor. The government cannot control alone: international relations and economic openness. If Iran were to normalize relations with major economic powers, lift or ease sanctions significantly, reform internal economic structures, encourage global trade and investment, then its trajectory could change dramatically. Economists estimate that with barriers removed, Iran's economy could grow several percentage points faster per year, far more than its current stagnant rates. But achieving this requires political will, reform, and real economic strategy, not just slogans. So let's recap. Iran has enormous economic potential: oil, gas, young workforce, strategic location. But sanctions and political decisions have crippled access to global markets, diminishing foreign investment and weakening currency. Internal issues, corruption, mismanagement, resistance to reform compound the problem, meaning potential remains unrealized. This is why so many analysts say Iran could be huge, but the system keeps holding it back. No matter how many resources you have, without the right economic environment, prosperity stays out of reach. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and check out the channel to find more amazing and new videos.